It's a very clear night here in Singapore for the Standard Chartered Marathon 2012 as we take a look at the elite runners.
And we're at the 5K mark.
And we're at the 5K mark right now. And Steve, it looks like they're timing it just right.
Well, I'll get a split. It was they went through in 16:42, which is pretty slow for the men, to be honest. That's sort of 2:18 pace. And that's something which I'm surprised at, and I thought they would have gone a little quicker than that. But you can see that even though one of the sort of non-elite athletes has just started to push on a little bit here, the others are still looking at each other, still waiting to see whether or not this is a break they should cover. You've just got to be careful sometimes, because their natural tendency would be, hey, 16:42, that's a slow time, someone's moving away, I should go with him. But obviously in the back of their heads is this idea that this is early, obviously it's going to get warmer, the sun's going to come up, humidity's going to stay high, and they just need to be a bit careful as Luc Cabet just decides he'll bridge the gap, he'll bring the pack, if you like. And of course, when somebody like Cabet does that, then the others are going to react, because they have respect for him and they think, well, he's somebody who we should follow at least. So I think this gap will close up fairly quickly. Well, Stetsenko is still leading the women. As I said, she's had a busy year. And that race in Yokohama, one of the biggest races of the year. Of course, it's marathon season. When you go through from October through to December, marathons all over the world. Of course, the famous New York Marathon had to be cancelled this year because of the atrocious weather and all of the problems that they had. But marathon running, massive in Japan. The Yokohama race is a big race. She didn't run particularly well there, and maybe that's why she's come here. Maybe she thought, for whatever reason, didn't go well there. I'm still in shape. I've trained for that race in Japan, and although this is only a couple of weeks afterwards, and normally you wouldn't really recover in that sort of time, she maybe thinks she's got a chance of using that fitness and try and perform well here.
Let me just tap into your experience here, Steve, in comparing the Singapore Marathon with the other marathons. We heard from the CEO of the Singapore Sports Council earlier before the race started, Mr. Lim Teck Yin, who said that he's very proud of where the Singapore Marathon is right now, and they've added a lot of features, of course, to the marathon this year. A lot of festive cheer, a lot more lights, a lot more buskers lining up the streets, and just to add a little more flavor to the marathon. Now, if you had to compare the Singapore Marathon to the majors like the London Marathon, the New York Marathon, and the Boston Marathon, how does the Singapore Marathon measure up right now?
Well, it's right up there. I mean, obviously in terms of numbers, as we see Cabet starting to push on a little bit here. Those races only have you got New York, you got London, there's only the marathon. They're not mixing it up with the half marathon as well, so they can have more people in that one race. London's different to New York. It's very charity orientated. There's literally millions of pounds raised there every year, and an awful lot of people who run the London Marathon are running for a charity. You go to New York and it's very different. It's a different type of atmosphere, a different feel. And I think that's the good thing about marathons. That's why people move around the world and want to do them. It's what we call destination marathons, because you want something different. You want Singapore to feel like it's the Singapore Marathon, to do things a little bit different there. And there's lots of, as you said, more entertainment on the route here. They're trying to involve the rest of the city, not just ask them to stay in bed and keep out of the way. They want them to come out on the streets. They want them to support. It's early yet, of course. And I think that's essentially what you want to do, to create this sense of occasion, the big marathon week. People get excited in the city. People are coming from all over the world to come and take part. And so it ranks very well. The problem for Singapore is, in elite terms, because of the conditions, it's never going to rank up there with those fast races that you were mentioning. But as a spectacle, as a big city marathon, it's right up there.
And if we're looking at the course right now, this Singapore, one thing that Singapore has the advantage of in terms of the marathon is that its course is very flat. And if you look at the road conditions here in Singapore, they're excellent for running. So if you had the the humidity to deal with as an elite athlete, if you look at the running conditions and the track, it's a very flat track, except for the Benjamin Shears Bridge, which they will have to tackle towards the end of the course. But do they appreciate the fact that it's the road conditions are very good?
Well, yes, it is flat. You probably, those who watch the F1 Grand Prix probably recognise that section of the course. I just saw one of the elite athletes actually dart off into one of the portable toilets, and that's always it's something. I mentioned that at the beginning. You don't often see that at this early stage, but hopefully you won't lose too much ground. So the men not started too quickly, and I don't think the women have either. I think this is a bit of a reluctant leader, Stetsenko. The others are sitting nicely behind. Just pick out one or two people for you. We've mentioned, of course, Kosgei, second to her last year in the yellow there, wearing number 13, is Roman Gebregesesi from Ethiopia. So she's back, and her experience may well tell. She's run a couple of races this year. Her last marathon was actually in Madrid back in April, where she finished second, got a good run there. So Gebregesesi, you can see Kosgei on the right of the group. Always spot her, the tallest, by quite a way. First 5k for the women, 19:30, which again is very, very slow. It will speed up. And of course, the tendency these days, even in races which haven't got these conditions to contend with, is the second half tends to always be quicker than the first. It never quite used to be that way. It was, in the old days of marathon running, it was almost a case of survival, and you went out at a pace and tried to keep it going. Now, the second half is where the elite runners start racing. So the second half of the race will undoubtedly be quicker, because that's a slow first 5k.
As we take a look at Stetsenko, still leading this pack of elite women, and just behind her was last year's runner-up Roman Gebregesesi, who came in just behind Irene Kosgei. And Roman Gebregesesi, of course, from Ethiopia, with a personal best of 2 hours 32 minutes and 28 seconds. She did run in Mumbai earlier this year in January, and posted a time of 2 hours 34 minutes and 18 seconds, if that's any indication of how she runs in humid temperatures. And she should, of course, figure in this race, along with Irene Kosgei, of course, who you can see there in the orange vest.
Well, nice easy pace, everybody very settled. The streets still dark, and this will be enjoyable running, actually, because as we know, when the sun comes up, the temperature will rise, and then it will get a little more difficult. And they've been out there for 25 minutes, but meanwhile, back at the start line, we're still waiting for the last of the 20,000 to come across. You can see they're wearing the red numbers. That means they're predicted to do over 5 hours. Most other people have got a dark blue number on. And then there's also an Ekiden relay. You can see those with the dark blue. They should have got going a little bit earlier than this. An Ekiden is we'll talk about it a little bit later, but that's a relay where if you don't feel like doing the whole distance yourself, you can get a bunch of pals together and complete it with 6 people in your team running various distances. So Stetsenko Uday, I think, as I said, I'd call her a reluctant leader. She's the odd thing, and this is going to sound silly, but elite athletes often don't like running too slow. You feel more uncomfortable. It's a bit like if you're a 4-hour runner, you'll have a comfortable running pace, and the elite athletes, if it's too slow, they can often feel worse than if the pace was a bit more honest, a bit a pace they'd be used to. So you haven't got to panic. These are early miles. Just settle down and not get too impetuous and want to kind of get back into your normal running, as it were. So Stetsenko is leading, but it's pretty slow.
As we rejoin the men right now, and we can see John Coleman there had the lead before. Now Samson Bauma from Kenya deciding to take over the lead. Of course, these runners, A lot of these runners, a lot of these elite runners know each other, of course, coming from Kenya and training together there. There's a lot of camaraderie between these runners, and there's a strategy formed between them where they do pace each other in these races before they break away from the pack in the final 5 miles.
Yeah, there's. I'm just trying to look if I can see him in the pack. I can't at the moment, but there's a very famous steeplechaser, Elliot Barngatuni, and he's in the past has paced for John Coleman. I don't think Barngatuni's up for that today. He had a great steeplechasing career. He's not a great marathon runner, but he's run a couple so far in his career. But at the moment, looks as though Coleman happy to do all of his own work. You'll see this in these first, maybe the first hour of the race. We'll see a few little surges. Somebody just feels his way to the front, see who comes with him, see how he feels. Does anyone else react? Just sort of testing people out a little bit. And one of the things you want to see, as we see there, 4 of our people in that pack, of course, there are more in there, but you want to break the group up. And you want the group to start, gradually have people tail off the group, get it down into a manageable size. And just Coleman, just putting his foot down a little bit here, you can see it's already just beginning to break the group up a little bit.
And of course, behind the elite pack are the runners in the open category who are testing themselves for personal achievement. They cannot, of course, match the pace of the elite runners, and each individual runner of the 19,200 runners here in the full marathon are doing it for their own personal reasons. And one of them running the full marathon once again this year is Fia Permadi. And her shtick is that she likes to dress up in different costumes every year. Let's have a look at what she's got in store for us this year.